Good evening, everybody, and welcome from New Canaan Library. I'm Anthony Maricola, Manager of Adult Services and Programming. I hope everybody's doing well this evening. Now I'd like to welcome back the wonderful Professor Kyung Hyun Kim. Professor Kim is a creative writer, a scholar, and a film producer who is currently professor in the Department of East Asian Studies at the University of California, Irvine. He has worked with internationally renowned directors such as Hong Sang-soo, Lee Chang-dong, and Martin Scorsese, and also with American film producers Jason Blum and Steven Schneider. Professor Kim is author of Virtual Hallyu, Korean Cinema of the Global Era, The Remasculinization of Korean Cinema, Hegemonic Mimicry, Korean Popular Culture of the 21st Century, all of them published by Duke University Press, and a Korean language novel entitled In Search of Lost G, which was published in 2014. Tonight, he will speak on the extremely popular Korean Netflix series, Squid Game. Professor Kim, thank you so much for joining us again this evening. The virtual floor is all yours.
Thank you, Anthony, for a wonderful introduction. Let me and Kathy Balance for inviting me back in such a short period of time. I must have broken the record in terms of the shortest duration between visits for guest speakers. So I am extremely honored to be here, to be speaking to you all about the latest sensation I feel we can't really call it cinema, although obviously, streaming content now has taken on more of a expanded function of cinema, especially during the pandemic, because we are still terrified largely of going back to theaters worldwide. It's become a phenomenon. So more and more, obviously, reliance is being made on streaming television format. But I feel as if this is an expansion of cinema, so I have no problem calling Squid Game a part of cinema. More and more, I guess, we find a renewed role of cinema, especially during the pandemic or post-pandemic, theatrical environment that we're in. Now, let me just share screen with you and see if this works. Okay, and let me know if it doesn't. I have no way whether all the slides and the clips will be working well. Now I became aware of Squid Game. Again, through almost a kind of not a coincidence, but circumstances of all these journalists, American journalists, becoming really mesmerized and fascinated by Squid Game. Overnight, it became a sensation. As soon as it started streaming 2 months ago, and I had actually no idea. And this is probably the first cinematic content that came out of Korea, where American journalists found out that this was sensational, even way before I did. I started getting calls and emails from American journalists asking me opinions about Squid Game. And only then I started to watch it to prepare myself for the interviews and eventual article that I actually happened to write on foreign policy. This is a article that I wrote. Squid Game hides a hopeful message within a dystopian nightmare, and which a lot of people actually since then has commented on by telling me that it actually offers a different kind of perspective than the ones that are really out there, more on the mainstream reception of Squid Game, which is more typical here. This is an opinion piece by Frank Bruni, one of the cultural experts who writes often for the New York Times. And I just wanted to share with you, I mean, more on a casual basis, those who are actually out there listening to this, that, what the kind of questions that I've been getting from, I mean, journalists from all around the world, not just Americans since then. I must have done 20 or so interviews over the last 2 months from NHK, and I still get requests. Just very recently, like 2 days ago, I did NHK World, Japanese public television, and Bloomberg TV, Canadian broadcasting system, Al Jazeera, whatnot, so Vox, many print, publications or magazines out there also have done. So for the next 45 minutes or so during my presentation, I would like to us to maybe go over some of the questions that I've been getting, and then what my response has been on a more again leisurely pace, so that I'm not like relying on like a scripted kind of presentation that I think is counterproductive when, especially over Zoom. It can be such a boring, suffocating experience. So I hope to make it a little bit more lively and improvise as I go along. So the first question that I usually get from journalists of all walks of life is, why is this series so popular? Obviously, it's the most popular series ever to broadcast and streaming television, not just Netflix, but I mean, in the history of streaming television, this is the most popular show, I guess. The numbers say, only within the first 4 weeks, you had viewership of 142 million households. That's a lot of people worldwide that have tuned in to the Squid Game, and they say it's that number is astounding, 7 times more than one of the most popular shows also on streaming television, Game of Thrones. So you can tell that this is by far the most popular series ever to have been made, not just on the standards of non-English series, but non-English and English, again, streaming content combined. And yes, I say answer to this question is that, I mean, as you can see from the Netflix site, I just scanned this earlier today. Squid Game merch that is available. You can get dolls, squishies, and different kind of outfits that are very popular. I work at a Southern California University, UC Irvine, and I see some of my students actually wearing these outfits already. During Halloween, I saw at least a few tracksuits that had originated in Squid Game, and people do say the red, flaming red, mask and warden outfits, as well as the contestant outfits, those green tracksuits, are really extremely cool. They're chill. They're in many ways meme ready, right? And they were able to get Netflix, that is, I mean, almost a free advertising, right? Within minutes that it became available on the platform. So even though very little money, or I don't think any money really was spent on advertising on Squid Game, within minutes, if not, like just days. This was traveling through social media, and to tell you the truth, I did see these merchandises and a couple of memes that did get through my feeds. I had no idea that what this was about, Squid Game, that new Netflix series, until again journalists asked me. But I was aware of, okay, there's a certain kind of merchandise that is out there, even before I realized that this was a very popular Korean streaming series. So we can tell that I mean the look and the merch made a difference, obviously, in making it popular. But at the same time, I always say, it's not just the looks, it's not the cool and the chill effects and the impact of the tracksuits that were primed for a Halloween costume. Ultimately, the reason why people tuned into this program was because it speaks to the economic problems and the issues that we face today, especially during the pandemic. This has been exacerbated. That is the growing gap between the haves and have-nots. And as we know from Parasite, and this has taken on a familiar kind of a setting that Koreans have taken on in making it as a common backdrop. In some ways, Squid Game backdrop, although they're very different stories, they're different characters, in many ways, the backdrop, in many ways, similar between Squid Game and the other Korean hit product that is Parasite. It's about radical polarization of classes and desperate Koreans trying to make their ends meet. And I say this also as one of the commonalities that actually overlap between the two programs is that the radical polarization, yes, has produced two different, classes, the 45 haves and, the 45 cents of the have-nots, the poor. But what ends up being dramatized here is a narrative arc that pits not a tension between haves and have-nots, and this to me is very important. It's a tension between have-nots and have-nots. People from the same, scummy, right, poor class are duking it out, is what I think is very interesting overlap between the two culture, the film content, Squid Game and Parasite, to tell a story about the cutthroat capitalism and maybe a different ways in which it veers away from dominant maybe discourse on many of the dystopian action genres that are available in Hollywood and elsewhere. Another question that I always get is after having usually I don't get 40-45 minutes to talk about Squid Game. I usually get when especially on radio and television, I usually get 7-8 minutes if I'm lucky. 5 minutes is usually the span of time where I really have to go for 2 sentences or less, 50 words or less kind of response. So this is great. I can actually expand on my responses. But after I talk about that, get that out of the way, usually the questions are almost too predictable. The journalists do ask me, why is it? Because now this is the third, right, Korean popular content name they have they're familiar with. They have only 3 or 4 years ago, K-pop, Korean film, Korean television, all of these things are in some ways popular, yes, worldwide, but didn't necessarily register in the familiar ears of mainstream American networks and media outlets. However, within the other than obviously you remember Gangnam Style by Psy about 10 years ago, people have gotten that over the last 10 years, but Psy only being also one hit sensation. Now, within the span of, let's say, last 2 years, since 2019, you have not just the Squid Game, which is the latest Korean popular culture sensation, but people have heard about Parasite, even in the mainstream. Average American has become familiar with also BTS, which is short for 방탄소년단, the latest K-pop sensation. It's not the only K-pop group that has become popular in the US and other territories, but certainly is the most popular, right, among the K-pop groups. And every song they make now and release earns a top 10, if not the top spot of even a Billboard Hot 100 chart. I think within the last year or so, it has broken the record. It has the most #1 hits. Permission to Dance being the latest BTS #1 hit by the claimed by the BTS, by the group. So what is it? And that makes these Korean television, cinema, K-pop so popular. And I always talk about, in answering this question, listen, Korea is a dynamic country. It has achieved political democratization as well as economic prosperity with just maybe less than a generation or 30 years. It was a dark, depressing place in the 70s and 80s, as late as 1970s and 80s. Since then, since 1990s, it has become economically prosperous. Those in America would be familiar with not only with K-pop and these popular cultural contents, but obviously LG, Samsung, Hyundai, a lot of these successful, economic company brands that have made its way to America. And also politically, it was a military dictatorship as late as I believe 1987. 1987 was the first year democratic elections were held in South Korea after 30 years of military dictatorship. So, within just less than, or just about 30 years or so, it has gone to a very depressing place where there was minimal, right, freedom of expression, freedom of press. People were, reeling from, devastations of a Korean War, which did conclude in 1953, but took a long time, obviously, to recover from the war because the war was so traumatic and devastating. To now, what it is today, a very popular destination, as evidenced by some of our students, it's the most popular destination for educational study abroad for University of California. I don't know about East Coast, but University of California, Seoul is the most popular destination. It's even more popular than Tokyo, London, or Paris in terms of students desiring to study abroad. So, it is a dynamic country that has enjoyed and been a site of all these, changes and remarkable transformation that has taken place over the last 30 years, but also that has a way in which, shadows cast over that progress, whether it be democratization or economic progress. And I always talk about the grim kind of realities of a quick-paced, fast-paced, industrialization that has taken its expense, that has taken its toll, so that you got like major catastrophe that has taken on a social level. The world's highest suicide rate is Korea, owned by Korea, and it's a solid number one. Sweden and Japan, which used to be previously number one countries in that fashion, is distant second. And the world's lowest fertility rate is now actually eclipsing even like 0.9 pregnancy per woman, which is far below what you need to keep up, population at even level. You need obviously 2 pregnancies per woman in order to keep the population even. It's now dipping below 0.9 fertility, pregnancy, and reproduction rate per woman, which suggests that it's a lot of young people think it's a grim place to live, despite all this great things that have happened to the country. So those ironies, those paradoxes, those conundrums is what makes, I think, Korea's dynamic, in a sense that there's a lot of story to tell that is about, again, economic progress and democratic openness on one hand, but that there is all these social ailments that Korea suffers from that you can't hide. That really punctures, I think, the 2 sides of the coin, the same coin, kind of a deal when it comes to Korea. So I discuss usually in a very 50 again words or less how I respond to the ways in which why Korean popular cultural contents have become so popular, and then there's all these other reasons, and if you have questions at the end, I would like to turn back to this question a little bit more and give you more detailed answer. I usually do get asked sometimes by especially mainstream media journalists. I won't name which ones. It has disappeared. Now, I mean, we know this is it's a Squid Game is a mystery fantasy or action fantasy, dystopian fantasy, which means that I mean, yes, it's based on certain kind of realistic background. It is a critique of as I say, growing again disparity between haves and have-nots and the impact that neoliberal capitalism has created, which is real, and so you have shrinking of the middle class that is at issue. But some journalists do ask me here, I mean, are Koreans this desperate, right, to be volunteering themselves, where the punishment can equal death? I mean, I think is perhaps the borderline, racist question. Of course you can't. I mean, you can't accept that this is all based on, realistic kind of configuration. But some people who may think, Korea is still like exotic place somewhere out there, especially, not people who are not very familiar with Korea, are serious and sincere when they ask this question, which catches me still by surprise. And it's great that I think during the first point of interest. They asked me this, and then it's gotten to a point. Okay, this particular question is not necessarily being asked because they become better understood. The fact that even in Korea, a faraway place, people won't be necessarily registering for a game when, if you know, that the punishment would equal death. I do get this question as well. Did the fact that it is Netflix and it is a streaming platform that has led to the popularity, that is responsible for the popularity of the series Squid Game? And I say, of course it is. And I can't even fathom Squid Game having this kind of a larger cultural, political impact worldwide if it was reduced to 2-hour, feature film format, and made into a film that had to garner this kind of a distribution, right? On a theatrical, right, platform. I feel, yes, pandemic did play a role. We have a lot larger consumer base, consumer base on Netflix. But this is the difference to me. Netflix, you're capable of opening, although there are discrepancies. It's not as if, if I go to Asia or if I go to Europe, I will get the same content, over there that I'll get here in the US. It's not like that. But as long as you have, licensing agreement that is direct, I believe, with Netflix, and not a licensing agreement, you're gonna get simultaneous, right, opening and release date for your streaming content, which means Squid Game had, I believe, simultaneous release date worldwide in 190 countries where Netflix is available. It's extremely powerful, Netflix. And, if you think about Disney Plus, on the other hand, only having what? Access to now around 50 countries. HBO Max, which I actually like better than Netflix. There's more content available that I like on HBO Max. It's only available, however, in 30 countries. Korea doesn't get it. HBO Max, despite its superior, I think, content quality, is more US centric, right? Curb Your Enthusiasm, Succession. I mean, these are streaming content I do not believe would be translated as well, accessible as well in territories other than North America. It's very difficult to translate that humor, Succession and Curb Your Enthusiasm would have, despite the fact that it's great. So the point that I'm trying to make here is Netflix is extremely powerful in the ways in which it actually reaches across the globe. And obviously, Netflix having complete control over Squid Game, direct investment, production, managed by Netflix, and then simultaneous, again, distribution that only streaming content can have in a company such as Netflix, global company as Netflix, has made a world of a difference in making Squid Game a worldwide, obviously, phenomenon. I believe there's only 4 countries. It's like China, North Korea, Syria are the only countries, I believe, that do not have Netflix. So, otherwise, you have Netflix just pretty much available around the globe. And that's how powerful this thing is. Which, and theater, film still poses a problem. I mean, it's simultaneous again, like marketing, distribution is almost impossible worldwide. In 109 countries, unheard of. You not only have to import, export, theatrical chains are obviously distribution, exhibition chains, and system is different from the production chains. Completely divorced from it in many, many countries, including this one. You got Lowe's, Edwards, and whatnot, AMC, that operates completely different from, again, like production companies. And so having a same, again, worldwide release date of a film that is also dependent on rating system, as well as tariffs and different kind of, again, configuration of export import trade rules between nations, it's extremely difficult. Netflix is not only global, but it controls, right? I mean, it doesn't have that separation between the traditional sector of cinema, that is, production, distribution, and exhibition. It has converged all three. So you have an advantage on that kind of broadcasting rights that only streaming media now is able to enjoy. So after I usually go through these questions, if there is time, and which I do have today, I do talk about how this particular series, in terms of its narrative arc, and mind you, I'm going to actually give you spoilers. I'm assuming that everybody has watched the series, and how this particular series end on a different kind of a note, how that ending, difference of an ending, may suggest a different kind of philosophical, I think, maneuver that makes the Korean content maybe distinguished or maybe different from Hollywood's. And I start with, like a casual, I think, social media exchange between Lebron James, obviously one of the biggest basketball players ever to play the game, who did watch a Squid Game, and Hwang Dong-hyuk, who is the maker, the creator of Squid Game, exchanged the two, having had some kind of exposure in the mainstream media even. LeBron James, in a casual conversation apparently with his teammate, Anthony Davis, AD, as you call it here in Los Angeles or Southern California, revealed that he had seen the entirety of Squid Game, and told his teammate that, yeah, I like it, I did finish it, but he said, I didn't like the ending though, as as the slide here tells it. I know they started off with a season 2, but like, get on the F King flight and go see your daughter, right? Get on the damn flight and go see your daughter is LeBron James' reaction. He seems to have, I mean, he's no film critic, and thank God, and he's a basketball king, and you don't want to be a film critic if you want.
Hey, Professor,
yes,
we're not seeing the screen.
You're not seeing the screen?
No.
Have I not been? Have you not been seeing the screen at all?
No.
Oh, you should have told me. I forgot to share then. Sorry. Are you seeing the screen?
Yeah, we see it now.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
I was assuming that I was sharing the screen. Give me. Only when I talk about LeBron James, you're like interested in his interest in my screen. All right, do you see it now?
Yes, looks good.
Okay, thank you. How much time do I have? 5 more minutes?
No, you could keep going.
All right. So, yeah, this is what, so, all right. Now I can show you what I've been talking about. So this is the first slide I had, displaying the merch, Squid Game merch. BTS and Bong Joon-ho claiming the 4 Oscars at the Academy Awards. All these people, desperate Koreans, trying to play the game. You didn't miss much. Netflix logo, and then here we are. Okay. LeBron James and his reaction to the ending. So where was I? Yeah, like I think he was really frustrated that that Kyun on the left of your screen didn't get on that flight and wasn't able to enjoy that rendezvous with his daughter. This to me, this to him felt as if it's a betrayal, and that's why he didn't like the ending. To me, this his reaction is very typical. Yes, it's LeBron, but I don't think it's atypical of American reaction to the ways in which the series has ended. Many people that I talked to were also frustrated because you know why? This is not a typical way to end a series. You have to end the series on a happy note. Happy ending is what I think Americans expect, usually from any series or any story. However, in this series, it veers away from it. It veers away from the happy note. Kyun, although he has obviously won the contest, has become the only surviving winner, claiming $40 million in the process. That was the prize money that everybody was after. He cannot enjoy and he cannot celebrate. Almost, making us void of any kind of happy celebratory kind of a note that usually mars an ending of a Hollywood series. It's not a Hollywood series, and I wanted us to maybe think about this and maybe conceptualize what is it about this particular series, as well as Parasite, a film that is, yes, in many ways similar to this film, obviously to the series, takes on a different kind of dramatic trajectory, and yet you do get an ending that is really melancholic, right? A family that cannot be united, and there's more similarities between this series and Parasite, I feel, that maybe it makes us, should make us better aware and acquainted with the Korean, I feel, psyche or even philosophy, if you will. I've always argued, especially when I was actually thinking about and conceptualizing my interpretation of Parasite, which also ends on a, as I said, depressing note that in a similar kind of a tone that relents us, right, from a family reunion. It actually ends on a note where it's pretty grim. The father cannot escape from the incarceration that he's suffering from the bottom of the cellar of the house. You know, he locks himself in, having created a murder. The son, yes, he's free, but you know, it's not as if, you know, he's gonna make. He is capable of becoming rich so that he could free the father. Here, you have a very similar kind of, you know, depressing note. You won the title, you won, you know, the contest. You have now $40 million, and yet something is off. Kyung cannot enjoy any kind of celebration. Nevertheless, you know, even that short flight over to Los Angeles, yes, it's 10 hours, but you know, that flight to Los Angeles, where he can actually have a rendezvous or reunion with his daughter. I don't think it's the second, you know, a preparation of us for the second season that is at stake here. Korean dramas, Korean narratives have a hard time celebrating an ending where you do have evil being beaten out and the good prevails over the evil kind of narrative that is very common to the Hollywood ending. In other words, in America, a lot of us feel that, those who are familiar with the Korean stories and plot lines, myself included, we feel that Hollywood ending is one in which, again, good and the evil exist, yes, but being good is simple and actually has an easier path rather than becoming evil. It's a lot difficult, in other words, to become evil. Between you and success, between you and a victory or a triumph, what you need to do, a lot of the Hollywood plot lines tell you to do is, all you have to do is root out the evil, which causes tension between you and goodness, and the problem is solved, okay? Maybe there is a biblical kind of a conception or background that is behind this kind of a storytelling, but it's one that Koreans do not necessarily take for granted. Instead, they veer away from it. Yes, in this drama, there is good and evil, but it's complicated. It's complicated by many confluence of factors, if you think about it. The evil, the mastermind of the whole Squid Game turns out to be one of the very friends. It's an old man that Kyun had befriended during the Squid Game and competition. It's very difficult to claim as him, the old man who is actually, a certain way, dying, to be villainous kind of a character who's a mastermind who can be rooted out, right? Between the path where you want to go, that is you and the goodness and the success that you try to achieve. It's not as easy because it is within you, the evil that is and the obstacles and the hardships, right? So a lot of times, I think what ends up happening is, as you've seen in Parasite, as well as in this series in Squid Game, you have a complication, not necessarily a simplification, which is what American narrative are usually aimed for. Simplification of a battle between good and evil. You have a complication of a battle between good and evil, and the perilous path one has to take to achieve goodness, which never can be that simple, and even at the end, cannot be neatly resolved. So that's one of the reasons why I think it has irritated people like Lebron, as well as many of the people that I talked to, those are the people who finished it, that has opened up what I believe more philosophical maybe inquiry, if you will. In the again, the differences of the narrative arc and the philological or existential kind of, again, questions that it again opens up. All right, I'm gonna stop here, and if there are questions, I would like to take that as a platform, diving board, to talk about some of these other stuff that I wanted to talk about, including the female characters, Sebyok, the North Korean defector, and the ways in which also it creates these kind of, again, talking points that not just veers away from the Hollywood ending, but one that doesn't necessarily take the usual path of dystopian thrillers that Hollywood usually takes, which is end or conflict that takes you on the path of thinking about conceptualizing things either as a escape or revolution. And I'll come to that through Q&A, because I feel as though I need a little bit of a break. Thanks.
Hey, Professor. So somebody had put in the chat, maybe it speaks to the fact that money doesn't always buy happiness.
Yes, exactly. That is true. And that is about the larger question, right? How do you critique neoliberal capitalism? It's not a real critique, and the content, the streaming content, almost is self-conscious of that. You can't have a critique of neoliberal capitalism and the growing gap between the haves and have-nots if you just go for an ending where the winner takes all is a celebration, right? And that the same rule applies obviously in Parasite as well, right? If you actually have a kind of a ending that, I don't know, like many of these other Hollywood films actually aim for, even in Trainspotting, right, which is not a Hollywood film, I understand, but you get a kind of, again, like you get a journey of a drug addict who ends up at the end. What does he do? He becomes obviously a successful realtor or something, right? And he says, I need all these commodities. This is my choice, right? At the end of the thing, which could have been, I think, in some ways, a protest, right? Film about neoliberal capitalism, which I thought Trainspotting was capable of doing. Toward the end, I mean, it becomes a weird kind of a celebration of let's forget about anything that has to do with the drainage of of capitalism, and then we'll instead just celebrate the turning off of an addiction, right? Which is certainly not what Parasite or Squid Game. I know these are different films, but is what they're doing. Hopefully
now, regarding Hollywood endings, how did the series do in Europe, where films often end on ambiguous and not so happy endings?
Yeah, so I think this is the thing. I think even in America, this is what I'm speculating that it did. Even in America, because of a success of many of sophisticated, I think, narrative, right, series that has come about. I think HBO has raised the bar of sophistication. I mean, I know a lot of stuff still is crap, out there, but there, as I said, I like Succession, which takes it, right. Is to me feels like a more of a European art house kind of a thing, where you are trying to root for the bad guys. I mean, you strangely get drawn to, again, this nebulous kind of a space where good and evil certainly has a way of playing, complicated cards with each other, right? Yes, they're all assholes and they're all selfish and, they're just all bastards and whatnot. But it paints a picture that I think a world where positives and negatives do not get resolved, even at the end, right? And this is what the kind of a world we're living in, you know? We just can't say, okay, well, Trump is gone, so we're you know, this is the end. It's not like that, you know? I mean, you can say that, but that's certainly not the reality that we live in, you know? I think it's a lot more complicated, and there are more of these innuendos, which I think is more reflective on many of the interesting kind of narratives, even in America, that has been introduced, and that explains, I think, for the success of some of these Korean contents, you know, that have now, okay, we're capable of doing these kind of complicated endings, you know, like unhappy endings, right? Americans will maybe still go see them, despite their, you know, censures or, right, critiques.
Yeah, very true. It's very reflective of the world we live in. Now, since you have you know, decades of experience in this, what do you think what's driving the interest in the U.S. for Korean culture and entertainment, like Parasite, Squid Game, BTS? Does it mean that Hollywood is more open to storylines about Korean characters, or is it just that audiences are looking for a fresh approach to learn about different cultures?
Yeah, so it's I think a little bit mixed feelings. I thought I didn't realize that there is a dub version of Squid Game available, right? You know, the biggest hindrance we know and biggest obstacles for years of non-American, right, content, or English content in this country are subtitles, right? We know that to be true. Americans hate reading subtitles, and we don't have like the dubbing culture like the Europeans do, right? And when we go to movie theaters, Europeans don't have to read. There's an voice actor for Tom Cruise, or in Germany and whatnot. Here you somehow say, okay, we don't like dubbing, so we've held on subtitles at the expense of less movie goers, right, for foreign language films. This has always been a problem. There's pros and cons. Stream content, however, now is available. Squid Game, I believe, with dubbed English versions, which makes it far more, right, accessible than movies like Parasite, which I don't think it still has dubbed versions, English language versions available. You have to read subtitles. So that takes on a greater amount of audiences, and stream contents have that advantage. I mean, of course, theaters could do the same thing. You could dub Parasite into English language, but they have not made that choice, because theatrical is a lot more traditional that way and conventional, so they've not taken that European path. Stream content knows where the money is. They say, okay, people don't like to read, we're going to do dubbed versions, right? And so it's more complicated, right? I don't know if then is it a foreign language, right, content that people are watching here? Maybe not. I think a lot of people watch the dub versions. So if it's dub version, is it less Korean? Of course it is. But is it then, is it non-Korean? No. So, there's that mixed, obviously, emotions that I feel, again, thinking about and contextualizing, right? What it means to have Korean content in a larger, larger context, cultural context, where streaming is now, the language of the day. Yeah.
And I heard there was a lot of criticism about the dubbed version, the dubbed American version, that it was losing the essence of what it was about, because of that translation.
Sure, but the same kind of controversy could be held. And Parasite had all kind of controversy in the subtitle versions too. Is that the right translation, and so on and so forth. And but this thing to me is very clear, and I wanted to talk about this a little bit earlier on when I was thinking about the the streaming versus theatrical, is that you got in streaming, you have not only a simultaneously obviously release date that I talked about, but you got basically everything now meme ready, right? That people are taking on these little caricatures and making them identifying and like the character, the North Korean defector character, for instance, Haebyuk, has become so mimified, right, overnight, that she became like an icon on social media, right? Which in some ways loses its cultural essence that you had originally, that is about, right, the tragedy and the trauma of the division of Korea, Korean War, and the plight of these defectors that are out, the poverty-stricken North Korea. It loses any kind of, obviously, those cultural essences when you idolize her, and she becomes a meme sensation, right? But that's what you need, for any kind of content to have a kind, the sensational kind of success you got in the social media these days, or streaming television these days. So, it's more complicated question about, well, does it lose essence? Yes, of course it does, but this is the flatness of image that we've got, and I am responsible then, adding a little bit more layer, to even a response like LeBron James, right? Like he can spew out whatever he needs to about Squid Game, and it's my job then. Okay, I think this is what he wanted to say, right?
Yeah. Now, on the topic of North Korea, I recently read that someone was sentenced to death for in North Korea for smuggling episodes of Squid Game on a flash drive. Now, I take that, is that a realistic commentary on, Kim Jong-un and North Korea's opinion of the show?
Western media has a way of also, I mean, I don't believe everything that I read about North Korea here. Of course, it's a dark place. Of course, it's a country that has no human rights. But I don't know. Like anybody will get executed. I think you have to read it with a grain of salt. It makes a great story. It makes a great story. One of the defectors may have said that, and that takes on a viral kind of circulation, which I think it's because it makes a great story. The Squid Game is about execution, and here you go in North Korea, you get their execution ready.
Let's see. So now, is Squid Game a real game in Korea?
Oh yes. It's funny because listen, I came to this country when I was 15, in the 80s. And the only thing anyone in America knew about, I actually was in Massachusetts when I first settled, and not Southern California. And, in Massachusetts, the only thing anybody knew about Korea was the Korean War, which they called, Korean conflict years back then, because they didn't want to call it a war because of the the weirdness with Soviet Union at the time in 1950, and MASH, which was like Seinfeld of the 70s. It was not about Korea. It was about Vietnam, but Vietnam was too immediate and too traumatic, so they set it in Korea, which was a little bit farther back. War-stricken Korea, and many of the actors in MASH, the Korean or Asian actors, play Korea. They were not Koreans. They spoke very, very poor Korean, and it was an embarrassment. It's funny, like 35 years later, right? Here I am, answering questions about all kinds of things, including, like never mind MASH. Nobody, like even remembers MASH anymore. It's people ask me about Squid Game, the game I used to play. Yes, as a child. Now they're all of a sudden interested. Yes, it's a real game. I used to play. It's a kind of a game that begins on a hopscotch kind of a deal, and then it becomes a wrestling match at the end. Which is a weird kind of turn of an event. And many of the games that they play, takji and which is like the slapping of the cardboard box flips, as well as the what it was translated as green light, red light, which is originally 무궁화꽃이 피었습니다. It's now it has become global sensation. My non-Korean students have absolutely no idea what these things even mean. I see them now play the game, outside in the campus. So I'm very glad, that first I don't have to my reference point has gone beyond MASH when talking about Korea, but also sad in some ways that it's still a place. There were competition, intense kind of competition still rule, as I talked about, so that people do commit suicides at a very rapid pace because it's so intensely now, people can't accept failures, in their career. So that's one of the reasons why they commit suicide. And people are afraid of having babies, because of that intense competition. They don't want newborn to be coming out into this world where only the rich can survive. So again, I got mixed feelings about both.
Yeah. Now, with that said, what's Korea's response to the show? Was it a success there? I mean, it is filled with a
extremely, extremely successful. But I don't think it would have, just like Parasite, I don't think it would have been as successful without the global success, that both stories have generated. I mean, it became, I think, even more successful because it was like, wow, like, why is the world watching this thing? And so a lot more people tuned in out of that curiosity.
Now, what do you think is next? What do you think is next for Korean film and television in the US? I mean, we are very interested in Korean culture. I mean, even my children, who are 6 and 3, are big BTS fans.
Yeah.
So it looks like it's coming at us at full force, and it's amazing.
Yeah, and I feel as if hopefully it'll take a more mature turn. I've said this. I just had plugging my new book, Hegemonic Mimicry, Korean Popular Culture of the 21st Century. I talk about this over and over. That you had a unique case of South Korea obviously becoming a very, very close ally with the U.S. because of the Cold War, because of the Korean War, and then economic partnership, on the level of anti-communist, bloc that they formed over the years, that it has become a very close ally, one of the closest, trading partners and diplomatic, partners in the region. That has led to, I think, a generation or 2 generations of elites in South Korea who speaks English very well, who is very familiar with American content. And these are the kind of, I think, seeds that were sown, the infrastructure that they needed to make things on a, yes, in terms of, I think, in terms of the narrative arc, certainly different from the Hollywood ending, that Americans usually like, but I'm conforming in that way, but conforming in terms of, again, the production value. I mean, these are, this could be in many ways, and that's why it's so easily translatable, right, and accessible to American audiences. China would have a hard time making, stories like Parasite or the Squid Game, although they understand it, because they have had less exposure to the Hollywood and American, popular popular culture industry, it's very difficult for them to actually make something like BTS, which simulates but also characterize it very different, from the American experience of music. So hopefully this now is a departure for Korean cultural content, popular cultural content, to mature itself, to become a little bit more, I think, maybe more bold than what it is, take on a theme, and I think a style that pushes it on a level that I think in some ways, again, departs completely, right? Not completely, but on its own independent trajectory, right? So that you feel as if, oh, even like the new K-pop idol is not just a copycat, or has to suffer accusations of being a copycat. Squid Game doesn't have to suffer from accusation of another copycat dystopian feature. Oh, isn't it just another battle royale, or isn't it just another Hunger Games, which is out there. And I do agree that there is again copycat feature, right? So that you can truly say that there is own, I think, mature independent voice that you get even the most successful mainstream popular cultural content that is coming out of Korea. So that I feel would be the next stage of this whatever revolution of Korean popular culture.
Yeah, well, I know all of us here are definitely looking forward to it. So I think on that note, since it's 10 after, I think this is probably a good place to stop. All the questions were answered. It was a fascinating lecture, and I really appreciate you spending your evening with us again, Professor Kim.
Yeah. Okay. Good. And thank you. It was a joy. Because of the technical difficulties, I was going to show a clip, but those of you who are interested, this is the last thing that I'll say. Those of you may be interested. I was, and you can do certainly. You all have Netflix. 159 countries do, something like that. So the scene that I wanted to show today is from the episode 6, I believe, which is Ganbu. Episode, which
you can, Professor, if you want to share it, I mean, we have the time. If you do want to share it, absolutely.
You want it to be over by. All right.
You may as well. Whoever's here has stayed with us. Yeah, they'll be happy to watch it. Thank you.
Good. So I will share the screen here. I know how to do it now.
vel 역전을 노리시겠다.
왜? 쫄리냐?
씨발 쫄리긴. 구멍에 넣는 건 나도 좀 하는데. 괜찮겠냐?
넌 여기서 돈 벌어서 나오면 그걸로 뭐 할 거야?
동생이랑 같이 지낼 집 하나 구하고 북에 있는 엄마 데리고 와야지.
야, 400억이면 그런 거 하고도 남아. 그런 거 말고 뭐 없어? 뭐 어디 가고 싶은 데라든지.
제주도.
제주도?
TV에서 봤는데 조선 땅 안 갖고 꼭 외국 갔더라.
야, 스케일이 제주도가 뭐냐? 뭐 하와이, 아니 몰디브 정도는 가줘야지. 모히또도 한잔하고.
모히또?
너 안 봤냐? 이병헌 나오는 거. 모히또 가서 몰디브 한잔. 몰라? 야, 너 진짜 안 되겠다. 너 여기서 나가면 나한테 남조선에서 폼나게 돈 쓰는 법 좀 배워야겠다. 둘 다는 못 나가는구나.
Okay, so this was what I wanted to show because I thought,
내가 잘못했어 알리.
oh shoot, okay,
내가 너 오해했어. 근데 난 이렇게 죽을 수 없어. 내가 여기서 죽을.
all right. I wanted to show that clip because I thought it was most interesting, kind of passage. And this is one, it wasn't just me, I feel like 새벽에 during this sequence, the North Korean defector character really rise above the occasion, right? I mean, she's great. And a lot of people actually over social media has commented on, you know, how she's the next thing, she's brilliant, you know, she's become iconic, overnight sensation. Because why? In this conversation, you see two characters, and to a certain extent, Kyun does that too, the main character. At some point, they are not interested, they become disinterested in two of the objectives that usually these kind of dystopian thrillers take. If you're in that situation, you have two options, right? You have two options, either escape, right? Either escape or revolution, right? You know, those are two choices. Usually in American dystopian thrillers, imagine, right? These are two things. You either you know, a stage of revolution, you know, you take the weapons away from the killers, or and the money, of course, or you try to escape with the money if you can. You know, is the objective that you try to conceptualize with the contestants. Here is an example of neither of the two are happening, right? Neither of the two are happening. Here is, I feel, a true kind of, again, I think almost a Asian sensibility that refutes that the two options. And I know it's an imaginary, again, fictional space, but accepts death, right? Accepts death. And the moment you accept death, this is one of the fascinating things that happen. You actually open up another utopian kind of a thing. Here, you talk about the Jeju Island or the Maldives, or, you know, different kind of paradises. But here is, I feel, a way in which utopian spaces can project alternative meaning of existence beyond life and death, okay? Beyond life and death. In American, again, dystopian narratives, what you have is so much institutionalization and so much of emphasis on life and death, and being just and unjust, between innocent and being guilty. You can't open up that space, that nebulous space, that ambiguous space that may have some kind of ambiguity between life and death, okay? Here is a possibility or a conjecture of that. To me, that's really important. And that's one of the reasons why this particular character is fascinating, because she is not just about anti-North or anti-South or capitalist or communism. She is about somebody who actually opposes, right, that kind of bifurcation, if you will, between a will to live and will to die, you know, which is very difficult to pull off in Hollywood kind of a sensibility or setting. Yeah. So that was what I was trying to aim at and trying to expand on the narrative, again, arc that veers away from the Hollywood, and certainly in these characters and their spots, where it gives you kind of, I don't know, a layered meaning, right, on existential question, which I think works even on an intuitive level, that people are drawn to, or else she wouldn't be such an iconic figure, you know, on social media. But that's, to me, maybe the philosophical or theoretical angle to get some extraction of meaning behind it. Yeah.
I just want to share this last comment with you from one of our viewers. They said, "Thank you, a Korean American here, and I found it very interesting to see another perspective as to why Squid Game has become so popular. It's no surprise to me to find the ending unsatisfactory. I love watching Korean dramas, but American and Korean cultures are so different that even I tend to gravitate towards content with happy endings."
Yeah. So, all right, good. I am very glad that I was able to play the clip, and those of you, those few who stay, were able to watch it together. It's a group experience that's always more joyful than just trying to, you know, even for streaming media, you always hear. But yeah, I was able to expand.
No, this was great, Professor Kim. Thank you so much. It was wonderful. I just shared in the comments. We have virtual Hallyu in our collection. So I just shared it to the viewers so that they can check it out at the library and do some further reading.
There is listen, I do have can I? No, I can't. But yeah, it's somehow I have been publishing with Duke. So my latest book, if you just type my name, you'll get it.
Wonderful. We'll make sure we add it.
Yeah, E21 Kim gets you a discount of all my books. So there you have it.
No, that's wonderful.
Yeah, at Duke. All right.
Yep. Thank you so much, Professor Kim.
No,
hopefully you have a wonderful rest of the year, and maybe in the new year we can have you come back. I'm sure there will be something new, and exciting awaiting us.
Yeah, I love going back to New England. All that foliage, you know. Oh, it must all be over by now, but yeah, I still.
Yeah, it just at the tail end of it. But like, you know, we do have a new library coming up in probably about 16 months. So we would love to host you in person. It could be a 300-seat auditorium. Yeah, we would love to have you.
Thank you.
All right. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you, everyone.